everyone, it's day 72 of the Bible in a year, and today we're going to be ending Leviticus, probably to the relief of some people, starting Luke, and I'm going to touch on a little bit of Proverbs as well. The first thing I really want to look at is Leviticus 26, all of it really, because I know personally when I was reading it, I found it quite difficult to read, because here we have God punishing Israel, and he's speaking really harshly, and it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable when I read things like this. I'm going to be honest. It makes me feel like, Lord, can you really do that? We're so quick, I think, to emphasise God's love and his grace, and that's not saying that because of what is written here that that is diminished in any way, but I think what we have to deal with is that this is God as well, and even though he's speaking in what seems to us as a harsh way, I think once we break it down we can kind of try and understand why he's saying these things. The one thing I want to say is that it really, personally for me, it really annoys me when people read fear the Lord your God and they say, oh no, that doesn't mean fear as in be afraid, it means respect. No, it means be afraid. And you know what, this passage here really highlights why you should be afraid, because God has the ability to be angry. God has the ability to punish, and I think that we can forget that sometimes. But if we're going to take God for who he is and who he says he is, then this is the aspect of God that we have to accept as well. And it may be difficult for us to read, but you know what? God knows that. God knows that it's quite difficult for us to read, because, to be honest, who likes to be punished? So this kind of shows us that, when we do read fear the Lord your God, there has to be a part of this that is, fearful of God because of what he can do and what he's capable of. And sometimes it's only because of his grace and mercy that he doesn't do these things to us, So that's one thing I really want to highlight. Another thing is that, if you, I was going to say put yourself in God's shoes, but no one can really do that. But, if you remember that Israel is his chosen people, he's led them and protected them out of Egypt. He sent someone to them, he sent Moses to them, and he's led them out, and he guided them every day and every night with pillars of fire, pillars of cloud, and he settled them into this land. He's made sacrifices so they can still have a relationship with him, and then he's saying, you know what, if you disobey me, these are the consequences of disobedience. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy. And for me, when I thought about this, it reminded me and it emphasised God's jealousy. He's a jealous God. He's jealous for his people, and he says, I love you so much, and I want you to stay on the good side of the grass almost. We always say the grass is always greener, and he's saying this is the green side of the grass. You need to stay on this side. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps you understand this part, and kind of, I kind of want to remind you that it's okay to be uncomfortable with what you read in the Bible sometimes. Like, we're all human, and God knows that, and God knows your heart, and he knows when you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you just kind of have to say, you know what, God, I might not understand why you're saying this, but I trust you, and this is who you are as well. You're not just this loving, graceful, merciful God. You're also angry and passionate and a jealous God, and you're jealous for me. And yeah, I just think we have to accept that. Another thing I want to highlight is in Leviticus 27 verse 28 and 29. Here it is. But nothing that a man owns and devotes to the Lord, whether man or animal or family land, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most holy to the Lord. No person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. He must be put to death. It's verse 29 that I really want to highlight here. I can't remember why I wrote verse 28 in my notes. It might come back to me later, but for now, I remember why I wrote verse 29. And when I read, no person devoted to destruction may be ransomed, he must be put to death, it made me think of all the non-Christians that I know, the people who don't know Jesus, the people who aren't saved. They're devoted to something that isn't Jesus. They're devoted almost to destruction. They're destroying themselves, and they're devoted to that. They're devoted to sin. And no person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. People people always make jokes, you know, people who don't know Jesus, they think, oh, you know, when I get to the pearly gates, I'm going to try and wing my way in there. No, that's not going to happen, because no person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. He's going to die. And that's quite harrowing, really, and, you know, quite difficult to accept when we remember all the people around us. We're surrounded with people who don't know Jesus. But what I've got written here is that there's always a chance for them to turn around and to devote themselves to something else, to someone else, and that someone else is Jesus, and that is the hope we have. You know, and when I read that, I wanted to backtrack with me to 26, 40 to 45. I'm not going to read it all out because it's quite long, you can read that yourself. But I want to highlight the bit in 42 where it says, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and my covenant with Isaac, and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. And God remembers, you know, he doesn't forget. And when we turn around and we devote ourselves to Jesus, he remembers his blood. And because of that remembrance, he says, you know what, I made a covenant with you through the blood of my son, that if anyone turns to him, I will give them life and I will forgive them. And that's awesome. You know, he's always been a God who remembers. And